Hello.
All right. Cool.
How's it going?
Oh, it's not too bad.
Good. It's
You
great.
know, just a mad dash to 5:30.
Mad dash. Your shirt, isn't that?
Oh gosh, you're not even realized.
that
I didn't even make the connection.
was
Like, what do you mean?
that was good.
Well, yeah, it was good on your part. I didn't catch it.
That's a
So,
great shirt though.
oh well, thank you.
So how's everything been? How have you guys been? What's going on?
Things are like this, which, I guess that's normal.
Yeah.
There's oftentimes this sense of remembering a time when it seemed, and I'm going to say that because that may not be the case, although Susanna remembers it the same way. It seemed like things were less complicated and there wasn't always something going on, but
Yeah.
um, you know, it seems like regularly we have things going on with Tex in school. She's having a hard time with this, or stuff with her boyfriend, or Susanna's still recovering from the surgery. She's a lot better than she was, but
Good.
it's going to be 6 months before she can really use her arm again.
Yeah.
You know, um, so and even she said it the other day. We were talking about it because we were talking. Both of us were relating how it seems like both of us just have kind of lost the drive to do things. We just, our inclination is to just sit down or lay down and not do anything, which that's not me. I mean, Susanna's always kind of had that about her,
Yeah.
with the exception of her job. But not me. I've always been the kind of person that if it's daylight, I'm going to be doing something.
Yeah.
But here lately, no. And so we were talking about this and about how, the memory seems to be really affected, and the lack of motivation. And she said, well, look at what we've just been through. And what she's
Exactly.
referring to is she got her breast cancer diagnosis in the summer of July of 2022. And since then, there have been a few little windows of time where there wasn't a lot going on. I mean, she was recovering, and so that has an effect on things. But
Mhm. Yeah.
um, it's not like when you've actually got, you're in the heat of those things. So, with the exception of those little windows of time, it's just been, one thing after another: diagnosis, surgery to remove it, then radiation for 6 months, and then recovering from that. And then, and it's just been one thing after another. She was in the hospital, I guess it was last December, for the heart issues. And, then she's had, what, since the beginning of summer, she's had, yeah, 3 procedures: her
Wow.
low back, then her carpal tunnel, then the shoulder. Um,
Man.
yeah, so I mean,
Wow.
it's just, she said that was her point is, we've just been through.
Yeah.
Uh, I forget how she phrased it, but the idea was we've just been through the ringer, kind of, with all of this stuff. And yeah, well, I guess you're right. I hadn't really thought of it.
The body can only go through so much before it needs to just take some time to recover and slow down and recoup. And if you are, um, not giving yourself time while you're going through all of that, if you don't have time to do it, eventually it does catch up with you. And it's just, unfortunately, we do have times where in our lives things just go crazy, 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 and they seem to stack on top of each other. But it's where having that ability to also not do things excessively on top of it and like really cut back to where you're doing the necessities and then also listening to the body. And if the body needs to rest, you just rest and don't make it into something more where, well, but I should be doing all of these other things. Then you'll just end up with more issues of your own that you have to find some surplus to be able to manage going forward.
Yeah, and you're right. And I've more or less accepted that this is how it is right now.
Yeah.
Um, Although hardly a day goes by when I don't comment on it, because it is really strange to not
Yeah.
have that motivation to do things. I mean, let's forget about even the things that, the stuff that has to be done. Like,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of really simple examples. We've got some electrical work that needs to be done in the house. We've got some things we need to be done for Tuesday. Um, if we set aside all those kinds of things, dogs
Mhm.
going to the vet, I can look around the room and point to a fairly long list of things that I wanted to do because I enjoy them.
Yeah.
And they're just stacking up, they're just piling up. And that's fine. It's weird because after decades of being somebody who, if I've got free time, then I'm going to find I'm going to use that time to do things that I want to do, and of
Yeah.
course, do the things I need to do. So it's strange. Suzanne, on the other hand, she had to kind of learn the hard way because she was still recovering from the surgery when she went to that Amplify conference.
Hmm.
And then while
Yeah.
she was there, either on the plane or shortly after she got there, she picked up some kind of bug. So she spent most of that time with a really bad stomach bug. It took
Oh,
everything she had just to get back. So
wow.
between
Awful.
recovering from the surgery and then getting the bug and traveling, it just knocked her on her butt.
Yeah.
So she had to kind of get knocked down, and I finally, after months and months of trying to push the issue to do some of these things that I want to do and just not being able to follow through, I'm like, okay, this is it, this is how it
Yeah.
is. I don't know when this is going to end,
Yeah.
but this is how it is.
Yeah.
So I spend my days, if I'm not doing something I have to do, when I can remember to, because a lot of times I forget to do the things I need to do.
I know that.
Well, this is worse than usual. I mean, the issue of memory really has gotten weird in the last couple of weeks, but I've spent a lot of time either reading on the bed or watching interviews or documentaries on YouTube and sitting here with a guitar in my hand, just learning songs.
Yeah.
Uh,
Again, it's where you really need to dial back and be able to just do what you need to do to recharge and recuperate. And what I was going to ask, and I mean, you kind of half answered it as you were going through, but is because you said that you spent, most of your life doing, that if you wouldn't just sit and relax, if there's something not on your agenda, you'll put something on the agenda and take care of
I,
something. My question is, what was really behind all of that doing?
I've wondered about that because it was around this time last year. It was when we were doing the group with Kristen and Kaiser that
Hmm.
this came up, and I hadn't completely forgotten it. From time to time, I would remember that, and that would come up, and I would ask myself, so what is behind that? But I never I never dug into it enough to really begin to get an answer to that question. So it remains unknown as of yet.
I mean, it might be something where you can investigate certain things. You said you have a list of things that you would like to do but aren't actually doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it might be interesting to go through some of those and kind of one by one look at what is it that I enjoy about this activity? What was it, what purpose was it filling for you? What do you derive from it? Do you seem to be missing something when you aren't engaging in it?
Mm.
I'm just going to blow my nose.
Okay.
Oh.
Man, that's a great sound effect. If you could hear it on my end, that
Is
if
it?
I hadn't if that had been audio only, no visual component, I would have
Yeah,
never guessed that was somebody blowing their nose.
that's amazing.
See,
I don't know if you've seen, there's a Facebook advertisement that I've been getting for some new plugin where you can turn a fart into a cinematic sound, and they show like they have like a recording of a fart, and then they run it through this plugin, and it becomes one of these like cliche, s- epic, uh, ominous cinematic soundscapes for walking into a haunted woods or something. It's
wow,
yeah,
things things we didn't know we needed.
exactly. So Um,
Oh
so
man,
so going back to that, so looking into
yeah.
each one of these things, what does it actually provide for you, or did it provide? Because you might notice that now what it provided then is no longer relevant now. it's possible that it is something which you have enjoyed in the past, but that doesn't hold the same benefit for you now because it doesn't provide that necessity.
Well, and that ties into another element of this because I've tried to be really careful to make sure that I don't use this as some means of trying to convince some part of myself that um, there's some sort of great progress on this path,
Mm.
and that's why these things are happening, that it's all somehow a result of a spiritual unfolding.
Mm.
So I've had to acknowledge the burnout portion of it.
Hmm.
But at the same time, especially the last week or two, it started to become clear that the changes that have resulted from the work done and the shifts that have been experienced are also playing a role. And, I spent some time recently thinking about the whole thing with studying electronics because I've been doing that pretty intensively for about 2 years
Yeah.
prior.
Yeah.
And then, last July, it just came to a screeching halt after that first Feder. I can never I have a blank spot around the language for this stuff. After that,
Shift.
after that breakdown regarding the first Feder, that just and a few other things just came to a hard stop. Like the brakes just went on as hard as you could hit them. And so I was thinking about it the other day, and then I realized it's funny because, okay, goes back to Tex's boyfriend and part of why, I mean, there's some legitimate issues why I am troubled by him, but there's some
Hmm.
other things that aren't that. And one of them is that I have a need to be perceived as smart.
Mm.
And so how that ties into this is that the need to be smart. Well, studying electronics, that's generally considered one of those things that, smart, people with some degree of intelligence do. And
Yeah.
so after looking at it, spending some time, kind of investigating it, saw that, okay, even there's a genuine joy in it because
Yeah.
I would do that stuff as a kid when I was really little, when there wasn't even that sort of sense of self established yet.
Yeah.
But of course, time changes these things, and so now there's this sense of self and self worth wrapped up in it, and so I guess it shouldn't be any great surprise that that kind of a lot of its drive went out of it when when it became so profoundly clear that there's not any sort of central agent,
Yeah.
you know.
Absolutely. That can very well be the egoic drive that we get or the egoic boost that we get from so many of our activities tends to a lot of times after we have some sort of first fetter shift or insight, a lot of those things that provided that sense of egoic satisfaction do tend to fall away. Another possibility is that we often use things as distractions. So if you had that feeling of like you were doing a lot of the things that you were doing just to keep busy, to keep you from feeling whatever was going on in the moment, as you start to become more okay with just being with what's here, being with that aggravation if it comes up, being with feelings of unease, you stop needing so many of these mechanisms to cope with what's here. So you don't have to stay as constantly busy as you always have been.
Hmm.
And then another possibility for some of them can also be like I know you said you were, learning how to repair amps and stuff like that, and
Right.
it'd be like a sideline down the road or something. And that's fine. And there's nothing wrong with doing things with an aspiration of, starting a business or whatever. But a lot of times there will be this kind of if we're doing something for that push where like I'm learning this so that I can do that thing in the future. A lot of times that I'm doing this for a purpose in the future starts to lose some of that um that weight, that pull, that interest because it becomes more about how does this feel right now and less about the potential outcome 5 years down the road. Um,
Wow.
So it's something where just noticing how much of what you're doing is because there's really an enjoyment now, and how much time is built into it, that I'm doing it so that this thing might happen in the future, or so that this other thing that I don't want to happen might not happen in the future.
Right.
Um, yeah. And that's the third fetter version of all of this. So it can be like a first fetter issue that makes us want to do these things to fulfill a sense of self gratification and self egoic support and boosting. It could be a second fetter where we're doing things to distract from feeling uncomfortable in some way. It can be a third fetter where we're doing things for that purpose down the road. Um, 4 and 5 in terms of, doing things because I'm kind of similar to the second fetter, not happy with the way things are right now. So I'm constantly doing things to improve myself, to improve the way that other people see me, to improve the current surroundings, to make more money, to, you know, be happier in some way because there's some promise that if I do this thing, things will be better in the future because they're just not okay now. So it's like those first 5 can all have different hooks into why we do the things that we do regularly throughout the day. And
Hmm.
it's just really useful to see which one of those is this activity supporting.
Wow. It's funny. I could see the first two fetters, but I never made those other connections.
Yeah.
Hmm. And you bring up the idea of being distracted, and that goes back to the thing that we've been talking about the last few weeks about using caffeine or kratom or I'm trying to think. I guess that's really it.
Mm,
Uh, the question you asked me, actually, you asked quite a few, but the one question that really stuck out and stayed with me more than the others was, what are you trying to distract yourself from? What are you not wanting to feel? And I've been asking myself that a lot lately. Um, so it's funny that on one hand, or maybe it's more curious that on one hand, um, there might be a reduced need for distraction, but on the other hand, there's apparently, I mean, by all appearances, something else that there's still some avoidance around.
yeah, absolutely. So have you felt into any of that, when these urges come up, have you had any insight on what it is that you're actually trying to get away from?
Yeah, I have. And I want to qualify that because I don't want to create a misrepresentation. It's not like I've spent a huge amount of time doing that.
Mhm.
Because what I've discovered is that a lot of times it happens so automatically that I don't realize that I haven't stopped to take that opportunity with that moment, as I'm beginning, I'm at the top of the process of, you know, going to get coffee or whatever. Um, but I have on a few occasions done that. And I don't know that I would commit to this idea because intellectually, um, I don't know. I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is I'm a little unsure about it. But the way it arose was intuitively enough or organically. That's the word I'm looking for. It appeared organically enough that I wasn't willing to dismiss it.
Mm,
And so what I what came up at one point in time when feeling into that was this how do I sum this up really briefly? This sense of feeling unsafe in the world, this sense of feeling like out there is a threat.
yep.
And that it's in one way it's new information in the sense that I hadn't connected it to the things that we've been working with and talking about. But I knew that was there. In fact, I think that I thought I had largely resolved it. And now I don't think that's necessarily the case. In fact, I have grave doubts about that because in my 20s, I had an experience that led to becoming aware of that for the first time. And I
Mhm.
remember in my 20s, once I became really aware of just how threatened I felt by the world, um, I thought my idea at the time, and it was one I carried with me up until just very recently, because I went through a period a few years ago of beginning martial arts and getting really invested in that.
Mhm.
Because the idea that came up back then was, I'll learn martial arts if I feel like I can defend myself. That might help to begin to address that.
Yeah.
Um, of course,
Yeah.
when everything came to a grinding halt last summer, and all the motivation dropped out of everything, that came to a halt too, which is fine because I don't. Obviously, that's not the best way to address that. There's nothing wrong with martial arts, obviously,
I
but
was just going to say that there's nothing wrong with learning martial arts. The problem is it's still coming from that same starting point that the world really is dangerous. You
yeah,
really are. I mean it's no different than just arming yourself to the teeth because, like that's what people do, right? Everybody's
right,
scary, everything is dangerous. Let's amass as many weapons as I possibly can to keep myself safe. It doesn't get to that underlying belief that I
exactly.
am unsafe. It just gives us a temporary bomb to feel that, and you see how people react. I mean,
Uh,
it doesn't actually help. It just
mhm.
puts you in more danger because you're more likely then to react in an unhealthy way to what you perceive to be a threat, even when there isn't. So, you become jacked up and, some Bruce Lee, takeoff, but then you misread a situation because you're already coming from that starting point that everybody's out to get you. There's danger everywhere. And you might do something to somebody completely unnecessarily because you are so ready to react to that starting point. So
Right.
much better to go to the root of it. And then if you still want to learn martial arts, great. It's great meditation practice. It's great for health and, flexibility and all that. Wonderful. But to do it for that purpose can be really unhelpful.
Yeah, well, I actually think that it's counterproductive because you give yourself the idea that you're doing something to address that fear and that
Mhm.
belief, but you're not. You
Yeah,
still have that underlying fear and belief. You're still left
exactly.
with it. So you
Exactly.
invest a lot of time in something, which there's nothing wrong investing that time in, but you could invest time in rooting that out and actually dealing with what's driving it, which
Exactly.
that's the way I prefer to do things. If I'm going to do it, let's get to the real root of whatever is going on here.
Completely. Yeah.
So,
So, what have you found when you are um, operating from that belief that there's a lack of safety, that I am not safe in this world? How do you feel that? How does it make itself known? Is it physically in the body? Is it a stream of images or self-talk in the mind?
it's a mixture of a bodily thing and thoughts.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's just a bodily sense. Sometimes, in fact, this happened earlier. I was, while I was out, uh, I was driving to or from, I forget where, and it's funny. You never know why something provokes a particular response or reaction. But I saw this white expanse of sky, and when I
Mm.
took a look at that, there was something that, it was gone in an instant, so quick that I could barely notice it.
Yeah.
And then there was a shot of adrenaline. I was like, and there was that sense of
Mm.
there's this big world, you know,
Yeah.
and I was like, damn, there it is again. Jeez.
And the implication of that, there's this big world and there's just tiny little me
Mhm.
who's in the middle of that and
Yep.
completely vulnerable and helpless in this vast, powerful place.
Right. Yep.
So you said it came and went quickly, but um did you get a sense of like what could be done even from that space if you were to be caught in it?
Well, I'm not quite sure I understand what you mean.
Yeah, if it had lasted, if you had had that oh, and then it sort of propagated and continued growing, do you have a sense of how you would address that or handle it in the moment if it didn't just come and pass by quickly as a little spike of adrenaline?
Well, it could go one of a couple of ways because I'm still cultivating the habit of remembering to not push things away, but instead to let them be here and to feel
Hmm.
into them and really let them to bloom fully and to feel what's there while it's there. Then, like as I indicated, there's also the long trained reaction of pushing things away. And if I went to pushing things away, there probably would be some thought about thoughts countering that idea to try to put it in perspective while trying to keep the feeling at bay. So
Hmm.
it could go either way. I mean, you know, I wrote to you in the email about the incident where Tuesday was just really um,
Yeah.
rude and very condescending, and there was this huge flash of anger, and I caught it, and I just stopped talking, and I leaned. I was in the kitchen. I just kind of leaned back against the stove. I don't think she even noticed. I think she was distracted by the TV. And I just
Mhm.
sat there with it, and I started to talk, and no, that's a distraction. And just waited until the whole thing had passed, and that's still relatively new.
Yeah. And
Now,
that's amazing. And I really want to, again, applaud you for that because that is excellent that you were able to recognize it and then sort of ride the bull while it was happening and roll with it. And that's a huge step. That's really amazing.
yeah, I felt really good about it because I recognized what it represented. That okay, this you're gradually redirecting the way the mind
Yeah.
responds to this new way of doing things, but it's still very much a work in progress because there's still a lot of the times, like I said, and not even just with regard to say the inclination to go get coffee or something, but with other things, it'll just get pushed away, and then I realize
Yeah.
after I've done it, well, there was an opportunity. Like, okay,
Yeah.
well, next time.
And I made a note because I want to go back to one thing that you had said in there about the rude and condescending. But before we do that, I also want to bring it back to the feeling of unsafety with that wide open space. And I
Mm-hmm.
wondered if you noticed, and if not, that's fine. But I would, just kind of plant the seed for the next time something like this happens. Notice, did you notice? And if not, do notice how how it felt like when that feeling of small vulnerability happened compared to this big wide open space. How does that condense that feeling of self or the witness or the one who is in this small little body compared to this giant open sky?
How does it condense it?
Yeah, like did you feel how it made that kind of contract in a way into something that feels real, um, perhaps dense, perhaps really located in a body, um, kind of reinforcing that sense of
Hmm.
the self in that moment.
I mean, it's sort of in a not conscious, um, sort of secondary kind of way. So no, not in a fully conscious, very aware of it, can see it and taking it in. It was only very like the only word I can use is the one I just gave you is in a very secondary sort of way.
Hmm. It's fine. Plant the seed that if you get this kind of feeling again, when you have that, the world is unsafe, the world is huge, I am tiny and vulnerable. When you have that kind of feeling, see if you can immediately feel into the body and see how that um, reinforces that sense of separation. and that sense of me in some way, because that's what that's doing is by definition, when you're noticing that big open vastness, you have to then notice your small, tiny contractedness.
Right.
And right in that moment, if you can feel what now feels contracted and small and located, and see if you can then pan back out, do the peripheral vision, the peripheral sensations, feeling that expansiveness so that you start to match that sky. So
Hmm.
that instead of feeling, you can just notice at first where the sensations arise that seem condensed, and putting your attention on those, they might also just spontaneously open up again.
Okay.
But either that, or just if you can go right out to that open spaciousness so that you start to counteract that feeling of little me in a little body, vulnerable against all the forces of everything out there. And you start to have that, wait a minute, no, no, I can relax into this. Even in that moment of feeling like everything is huge and scary, I can relax even here with this. I can open up to this because these sensations that feel contracted, that all of a sudden feel like a Darrell, are just sensations. Like you said, there's a flush of adrenaline. You get a certain that happens in certain parts of the body. Perhaps even some of the muscles tighten up, brace themselves for impact.
Hmm.
That's all that it is. There's no actual self involved with any of that. There's nothing there that needs to be defended. It's just that habitual feeling that when we feel these contractions and we feel these sensations, we automatically assume that's a me who needs to be protected. And
Ah,
so we're questioning that in that moment, and then also feeling that no, 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 I can actually open up even around that. Even if they're still there can be this spaciousness around them so that again, it's not a me that's tucked away somewhere in the body. All of that is happening, and it's no different from that spacious sky that seems to be out there. So see if
okay.
you can break it down in the moment and kind of play with it. And the same thing goes even in other situations. It doesn't have to be a big open sky. It can be, I don't know, somebody being aggressive on the street corner or, whatever, where you suddenly start to feel unsafe in some way.
Hmm.
See if instead of that contracted turtling in that we tend to do, see if you can feel that more open expansiveness even in those situations.
Okay. Well, it occurs to me that there should be plenty of opportunity for this because as you're talking, it's things you're saying are bringing to mind contexts where these things occur. And I can, it brings to mind either things very general or in some cases very specific. And I realize that there's a lot more of that going on than I realized,
Mm,
you know, which
yeah.
shouldn't be any great surprise because we were talking about this the other night before going to bed, and I mentioned to Susanna, all of the things that were going on over the years as a kid growing up that helped to create that feeling. And I mean, it happened over and over and over again in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Um, so um, it's more it's more established as my sense of things and my worldview than I realized.
Yeah.
So,
And these are also where it can be useful in situations where you genuinely are not in danger, but the body feels like it's in danger. It can be helpful to use those positive affirmations like, I am safe. It's okay. Reminding yourself in this moment that things are okay because your actual surroundings do not equate or do not equal what is happening in the body. This is um I'm not literally being shot at right now, or somebody's not literally chasing me with a butcher knife. Like there is, I don't know what situations have sprung to mind for you, but I'm I'm assuming in most of those you aren't actually physically in danger,
no,
right?
in fact, in none of them, all of the things that I can think of are more of I guess what we might call an interpersonal nature, where I mean, over and over and over, starting from fairly young up into, I mean, just all across all of the years of my life, of people that I cared about and trusted to be there for me, to support me, and time again, those people failing. Now, I know people are going to fail us. I understand that. But we're talking about something beyond just people being humans, being flawed, and making mistakes. We're talking about, you know, real serious failures of, um, sort of a basic trust, crossing a line that really shouldn't be crossed.
Yeah. And so how does that show up for you now these days? It might have instilled a belief that you can't trust people, that
Yeah.
you're unsafe around other people, that your boundaries aren't even there to be uh, um, recognized or respected by other people.
And then there's a sense of, you know, things things are okay. There probably isn't anything to be worried or concerned about, but understand that all of that can change in a moment.
Yeah. Has that bracing for impact actually helped you at some point? Does it feel like it has saved you in some cases or served a purpose?
Hmm. I don't know that it ever has.
Isn't it interesting then that we continue to do it?
Yeah. Um,
So it's
yeah, it
something that
doesn't make any sense.
no. So it's something that you can question when you have the idea that everything, might go belly up at some point. Do you need to take care?
um, well, I've got dogs doing things, and I can never tell what's going to wind up actually being heard on camera and not. So,
Yeah, I can't hear anything, so it's
oh,
fine.
okay. Well, that's a relief.
Yeah, no. Unlike that snoring dog, the some weeks ago, that was
Oh, there have been some others too. I've been listening through
so
all of the old, all of the previous conversations, and I'm astonished at the things I hear. What?
it's so funny. It's so funny. No, I didn't hear anything now though.
Okay.
So, so if we don't have any justifiable reason to believe that things are going to go belly up, that things are going to suddenly turn, or that, it's one thing if it's something that you can take definitive action to prevent, right? Like there's a drip in the ceiling. Probably that means there's a problem with the roof. Should probably take care of the roof so that the whole roof doesn't rot and collapse, right? That's a reasonable thing to do. When it comes to expecting the worst in every situation and always expecting for the point of betrayal or the point where conversation breaks down, the other person disappoints me, unfriends me, says something, the friendship breaks down, whatever it is that you're waiting for. The anticipation of that is putting you in a situation where you are always experiencing the worst case scenario even before it happens
Right.
because there's this unease in the body where you are expecting this thing to happen that never happens. It doesn't actually prepare you so that if it does happen, it's not like, okay, I have done the thing, to um like I don't know, having cash in the house in case the banks, we have like a power outage and the banks collapse or something. Like, okay, I saved money. There's like even that's not a particularly good example, but it's like, it's not even something where there's like a positive outcome for having been anticipating the worst case scenario all the time. You're just living through something unnecessarily that's not actually happening now. It's still living in the mind,
Right.
assuming, every time we're operating from one of these primary starting point assumptions. We're not interacting with the actual world. We're not interacting with
Huh.
things as they currently are. We're only experiencing the world through that filter and anticipating how things could possibly go wrong. And it's useful to feel into, does it seem as though that is providing me some sort of benefit? Like, do I feel better because I have considered the worst case scenario and have gotten used to that idea? And I don't want to be blindsided by it happening in real life. Does it feel like you're preparing yourself for the worst so that you can kind of inoculate yourself to it before it happens? Or does it feel like there's a um you know there's we we tend to do it because we want to make sure that we're not being in a situation where we're going to experience the hurt of being blindsided by some situation that we might have been in something similar in the past. But it takes away our ability because to feel like we have the resilience to deal with whatever actually shows up. So it's putting us in a place of always feeling like a victim or a victim in waiting because we're still acting as though we can't deal with whatever happens if it happens.
Wow. Wow. Okay. Yeah.
Some of
And
this comes with some self-trust to know, like we talked about, that it's not trust that you can, rescue somebody from the top story of a burning building, but trust that you can handle if somebody breaks up a relationship with you or if somebody does something that you feel to be a betrayal. Can you handle those emotions and the sensations that arise in that moment? And if so, then it doesn't matter. You don't have to prepare for anything. You don't have to prepare for that to happen because you know you've got it if it does happen. And if it never happens, then it doesn't matter. You haven't wasted a decade of your life considering something that may happen, but also is just as likely to never actually come about. Do you know what I
hmm,
mean?
yeah, I do. I understand you completely. Um, it, it just leads to the question, how to unplug that, how to stop operating in that way.
Well, it's one thing, it's noticing when you're doing it, recognizing, is this happening right now? So if you're in a thought about, well, I'm bracing for impact with this relationship, expecting it to go south at some point. Is it happening right now? Do you actually have signs that things are going bad in this moment? If not, be present. Be here with the way things are, not in the worst case scenario of how you think they're going to be. Notice if it feels uncomfortable to live from the present moment where you're just assuming that things are fine. Is there some resistance to that? Does something,
Resistance to feeling like things are okay.
yeah, yeah. Is there like some fear that like, oh, if I don't do it though, I got to prepare for it or,
I think there is. I think there is. I think there is some resistance to that because the reasoning, and it's not a conscious reasoning, it's just the reasoning that's evolved over years of living and having these things come up because most of them, most of them, I mean, like the greater percentage of them have been things where I was totally broadsided. I didn't see it coming. I could have never seen it coming. I mean, it truly was. And I can think about some of those instances, and it really felt like circumstances just turned on a dime.
yeah.
And so the reasoning that has um, developed out of that is if I'm not doing something, which it's all mental really. If I'm not, God, how did you describe it? I can't remember the words you used, but if I'm not doing that thing of, kind of trying to keep all of that at bay
Yeah.
by, constantly contracting and being, being in a defensive state, then, I'm not going to be ready for it. And,
Yeah.
yeah,
So no, again, noticing, do you have to be ready for it? Would it change anything?
no, no, it wouldn't.
So
If
what's
I
the
don't see it coming, then
purpose?
I don't see it coming.
Exactly. And is anticipating it coming actually lessening the blow when it does?
No, if anything, it seems like it might actually be kind of building it up.
Yeah. And even hastening it because you can if you already have one foot out the door or you're already bracing yourself for impact, you're probably going to be acting in a certain way in that relationship that is almost becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mm, okay. Hmm. Hmm.
Because you have the starting point that it's going to go bad. So
Right.
it's might as well, might as well get it over with. All right, just save the trouble.
Yeah.
But that just sabotages all of our relationships and it sabotages all of our potentially positive situations if we steer clear of everything because of some sort of fear or shut down everything because of some fear that it could go wrong, even though we have no proof that it ever will. It's that negativity bias that we operate out of.
You know, I've gone in the space of about half an hour or so, maybe hour, half an hour, something like that. If you recall, I said something near the top of all of this about thinking that this issue had largely been resolved, to
Mm.
see clearly that that couldn't be any further from the truth. And that's fine. That's
Mhm.
fine.
Yeah.
Better to see the truth of things and deal with that. But um, it seems so. It seems so. It's so pervasive. It's
Mhm.
so it's wound through. I mean, if not almost every aspect of my life, and that seems really huge. How do you undo that? How do you stop doing that? How do you reverse that? How do you stop living from that place?
But you actually see it from the other side. That's actually a really good thing because it is sort of the root that is infiltrating every aspect of your life. You have every one of those opportunities to recognize it. And
Mm,
each one of those does not have to be tackled separately. It all has the same root. If you
okay.
get to this root, it's cutting off and killing all of the branches and leaves, right?
Mhm.
This is at the base of it. So it's
Right.
really attacking that that erroneous belief anytime that you can sense it. So anytime that you get that feeling of this is setting me up for I'm protecting myself from something I don't want to happen, or I'm feeling vulnerable and unsafe, whatever, however it's showing up in whichever leaf or branch seems to be occurring in this moment, follow it back. You recognize in that instant, oh, this is that old belief. This is that unsafety belief. I am not safe in this world. Comes to that. Check in that moment. Is this true? Am I actually unsafe right now? Let the actuality of the moment counteract that belief. Check in with it to notice, are you feeling something that seems to be provoking that sense of I'm unsafe? Feel into the sensations in the body. Notice them as they are. Notice that they are not actually relating to something in your external environment. Oh,
But
speaking of the external environment not being safe, the smoke alarm is going off.
ah,
You, you got that, babe? Thank you. um,
talking about ironic timing.
yeah, I know, wasn't it? So I don't know. Can you hear that? Does it?
No,
Is
I
it?
actually couldn't.
Okay. Yeah, it's very loud.
course, at the exact moment that that was happening, actually, an email came through and it made this goofy little noise that it made. So yeah, I think it was partially masked.
It's so funny. Thank you, babe. So, yeah. So anytime that you notice that feeling of um, insecurity, unsafety, check in with the body, feel how it feels in that moment, and notice if it's actually related to something in your external environment. Is it an adrenaline dump that is actually trying to get you to flee or fight in a situation? Is it something that is really helping you escape from danger? Or is it something which is maladapted to this particular situation? I just had a conversation with somebody and now I feel this sensation in my body like I need to escape and run away. Is
Mm-hmm.
that actually relevant to this moment? I step
Hmm.
foot into an elevator and all of a sudden I feel like I need to panic and rush out of the elevator. Is that actually relevant in this situation? It's not attributable to this situation. And in fact, it puts you in a position where you even feel less safe because that sensation can't do anything about this situation. Having that feeling of like needing to escape after speaking to somebody in a conversation doesn't doesn't it doesn't allow you to do anything. It doesn't help you fix anything that is wrong in that relationship because it's the wrong tool for a job. And especially if there is nothing wrong in that relationship yet. If what's wrong is just an anticipation of a potential future, that sensation has absolutely no relevance right here. And so you can recognize over and over again, this is not relevant.
So that idea of anticipation of a potential future, because that's, I mean, even if I take something, because there are these things that come up from time to time based on the current circumstances of our life, and
Hmm.
they are, there's a certain degree of potential for them to exist.
Yeah,
It doesn't mean that they will. It just means that, you could say, well, that's a possibility. It does
yeah,
exist. It's a possibility. But
yeah,
as you said, it's I think you said it was a potential for a possible future. So anytime we're dealing with something, no matter how feasible, it's still just a potential for a positive future. So it has to be treated as, um, um, I think what you said was not really relevant to the present moment.
yeah, yeah. The sensations are not relevant. Again, it's not to say that on a practical level, we can't make plans for the future. Like
Okay.
people have kids and they start saving money for the kids' college education. We don't know if the kid is ever going to college. We don't know if they're even going to survive to go to college, right? Like we don't know how things are going to play out. But we
Yeah.
set that up as like this is the anticipation. We're going to go in that realm, but that's it. If you start having attachments to that, that's you're locked into now. Oh no, my child says that they don't want to go to college, and now I'm going to, my entire plan for their future is going to be upended now. But it's that same thing, but from a negative. It's like we're anticipating the worst is going to happen, and I have to prepare for it in some way. And there's such a good chance that that is not going to happen. But you can do the practical steps if it's something that is relevantly practical to deal with, then we can deal with it. But again, with that same sort of healthy detachment of recognizing that we still never know what the outcome to any of our actions are going to be. This, you know, I feel like um my daughter is going down the wrong path in this way. I can do what I can to try to steer her in a direction that I feel to be more positive, but you have no idea how that's going to actually turn out. Whether the wrong direction that you thought she was going in actually might have some fork in the road that you never could have anticipated, and she actually ends up in a better place than your anticipated thing would bring her. Like we have to have that humility to really know that we are only doing the best that we can based off of our little bubble of reality, our little version of how I think this is going to affect her and me and everybody else, and we don't know. So it's
Right.
really coming to that, I don't know. But again, the confidence that I am resilient enough to handle whatever it is in that moment within me. Not that I can change her on a dime and make her do something else in that moment, but that even if she goes down that wrong path, I can handle that. I won't be torn apart with angst and anger and all of that. I will love her. I will do what I can to still support her no matter what she does, but it's not going to destroy me in that process.
Well, what you said about the resilience, it seems like that has already been proven because since sometime in early childhood, I've weathered, um, a pretty large number of pretty serious beatings.
Yeah,
And here I am.
exactly. Exactly. And now you have tools. You figure you got through it as a kid who had no coping mechanisms that, other than the unhealthy ones of, alcohol and stuff like that that you went to at one point. But like nowadays, you have actual useful, healthy tools for dealing with all these things in the moment. The
Right.
trajectory is in that direction. And the more you
Hmm.
do it, the easier those things get. So
Right.
the likelihood that if you could handle it as a kid and as a young adult, you're the best suited to handle anything that you have ever been in your life.
Right.
And the trajectory is that that only gets better from here.
Right. Hmm. Um, in the meantime, the way of addressing this or reversing it, if that's the right way to
Mhm.
talk about it, you said was what exactly? You said it and now I completely
That's
forgot it.
okay. That's okay. So to notice anytime one of its faces shows up,
Mm-hmm.
right? Any situation, you notice it and recognize that this is just coming from my starting point. This is that. This is the fear of the outside world. This is a feeling of unsafety. Recognize that at first. Notice if it's actually relevant to the situation. Is it something that is happening now? Is it real? Or is this something that the mind is creating to try to protect myself in the future in case something goes bad? There's one. So are you trying to anticipate something so that you are protected in the future, or is this something that is actually here now? If it's not here now, feel into it, relax, feel the sensations in the body that equate to feeling unsafe. Notice if that really has any relevance to being unsafe or to being in this situation. In other words, I'm feeling tension clamped in my chest. I'm feeling bubbling in my belly. I'm feeling gripping in the hands. However it's showing up for you, are these physical manifestations actually relevant to this conversation that I just had? Do they actually mean that I am unsafe and that something is going to happen? It's like we feel like because the sensation is there, that it's an active premonition of something that's coming.
You're right. We sure do.
So is that true? Are these the crystal ball that is actively telling us, beware, something bad's coming around the corner, you got to armor up? Or are they just old sensations that are responding to a belief that's being re-triggered over and over again?
Well, obviously, it's got to be the last one or the second one because um, if they truly were an indicator of something about to be coming, then I would be getting bombarded on a daily basis by things,
Exactly.
or to flip it around, as I once heard somebody put it, that my life has been awful and 99% of it never happened.
Yeah, love that. Love that. And then again, in that moment, when you recognize this, you can use the positive affirmations. I am safe. I'm okay. Whatever feels right to you in that moment. But recognize what is actually happening and what isn't happening. That what isn't happening is all that shit in the mind that wants to create some story to protect you in the future. It's not happening. Is it here now or is it mind made? Feeling into it, allowing those sensations to be there. If going spacious helps, go spacious, allow the sensations to be there, but have that space around it to recognize that again, these are not a crystal ball. These are not even relevant to the current situation. I can actually feel all this stuff around it that's not just this. This has just been what's been capturing my attention because it seems so important, because it just seems uncomfortable and tight and tense and bubbly and all of that. But it's only one fragment of your possible experience in that moment.
Right.
So we're undoing that. And every time that you recognize that that thought is coming from a place of nonsense, that it's not actually relevant here, you're undercutting it. You're making it less likely to be believed in the future.
I see.
You're undoing the conditioning of that thought by proving over and over again that this is just not true. It's not real. It's not relevant. This thought does not serve a purpose like it used to. Thank you for your service. You may go now. You may be relieved. And it's that. So every time it comes back, because it's not a, we got to remember that the root of these things isn't in itself a real thing, right? We talk about it like it's like a tree, like you have the roots and you have the
Yeah.
branches and all that, but it's not a real thing. It's just a habit of recurring thought. So all we have to do is change that pattern of reoccurring thought, and the root is gone because it's not like a real crystal that you know some dark crystal that's like in your chest that you have to like chop away at and chisel it and break it out and extract
Right.
it in some way. It's just a pattern of thought that's being believed, and the less you believe it and the more you counteract it, you change that pattern of thought.
Okay. Okay. And so the core of that idea is to just simply recognize it when it comes up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Be present, recognize if it's true or not, recognize what feelings in the body are reinforcing that sensation that it's true and that they are not themselves valid or believable or worthy of your attention in that way. Feel into them, let them be, let them go. Don't put anything more onto them than what they actually have, which is just a raw fleeting moment of sensation likely caused by adrenaline or some other hormone dump, and that's it.
Hmm.
They're not what we make them out to be.
Hmm.
And even if they feel like they're more continuous, right? Even if they feel like I had an interesting experience today, for instance. I had the MRI for my knee.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I don't know why. I've had so many MRIs and CAT scans, and I'm not concerned about these things at all. But for some reason, I've had like all morning, I just had this weird feeling in the body. And back in the day when I would be prone to getting caught up in thought stories and that sort of thing, it would
Mhm.
have been like this anxiety thing that was really, I would have had all these stories about it and it would have really ramped up. But it was just this kind of low-lying feeling of unease that was just sort of in the body. But instead of making it that, does she need to go out? Does she?
Yeah,
Okay.
there's something out there that at this particular moment she thinks she wants more than what's in here. All right, everybody. The party's changing locations.
Hmm. 5 minutes later, knock, knock, knock.
Mm-hmm. You are correct, sir.
Huh?
I said you are correct, sir.
um, but yeah, but basically what it was, and I don't know why, there was some sort of feeling of just unease in the body about this test or something else. It was just there. So all I was doing was just feeling into it, just feeling the sensations, but not with like this is a harbinger of death. This is, something really, really terrible is coming from this. It's just Don't know why, don't know what was bringing it up. It's just being with that sensation. And even the whole time, like leading up to the test, in the test, it was just feeling that like the sensations themselves are just kind of an interesting, lovely, buzzing sensation. We take it to be anxiety or we put some sort of context on it. But
Right.
by itself, they're just these kind of interesting body sensations, which can be quite lovely when you feel into them. And so it was just basically that. It was just, riding it out and just, uh, you know, feeling those sensations. And then they went away and they went away. But it was like, it wasn't a problem that they were there. It was kind of
Right.
strange. I just couldn't, it was like, I know we don't have to know why they're there, but it was a very
Right.
strange thing that it just sort of, and I've been fine about it up until today. It's just like I woke up just with that weird feeling in the body. So no idea, but just feeling it, letting it ride out, knowing that it doesn't have any premonitory quality. It's not that something really bad is going to happen. It's just riding out sensations.
Well, because of the fact that I've been walking around with this idea that this issue had largely been resolved, or at least was a non-issue,
Yeah.
um, I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
And so now that knowledge of its presence means that, and of course, I'm also looking, on the lookout for it because that's how we deal with it. That's how we unravel it. And, the mind has been trained for a while now to begin to start to look for those things, look for those opportunities, because that's part of this whole path of practice. And so it probably will start to at least grab onto that idea fairly quickly on its own. Um, but this stuff is probably going to be popping up all over the place because I just kind of, I can kind of see it in retrospect, all these little things here and there, and without really being able to consciously recall them. And what that tells me is that this stuff comes up a lot more than I had any idea that
Mm.
it was. So, and
Yeah.
that's fine. I mean, it's not a criticism. It's just
No.
interesting to realize that um, in working on this, in addressing this, it's going to be showing up all over the place because there's more of it than I realized because it was not on the radar because it was assumed not to be there.
Yep. And how great now that it is on the radar. And it's going
Yeah,
to be so easy to see it popping up over and over and over again in different contexts.
right.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, because, now something can be done with it.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, it's, obviously you can't do anything with it if you don't have an awareness that it's there.
Yeah, completely. Yeah. We really need to recognize it's like the first thing we have to do is to notice that these underlying beliefs are operative. And then we start to recognize them all over the place because then it's like, oh, well, of course, it's literally coloring every single aspect of our world because it is like a primary filter through which the entire world is being projected.
Yeah, and it is. I don't know how I would place it compared to the whole "you are the problem," black sheep, scapegoat,
Mhm.
um, all of those starting points. But I think I kind of have a suspicion that this one may actually be more primary than all of that other stuff. Because case in point is for the 30 odd years that Suzanne and I've been together, um, I have never been able to drop my guard. Um, some of it's come down a little bit as some things have changed, but that fundamental belief has not um, been released, and so it makes it really hard to reach out to people I care about and to give and receive love and affection.
Yeah.
I tend to be a little more kind of on the Spock end of the spectrum with these things. mean, I can demonstrate it all day long. I mean, I for weeks now, actually for years since we've been dealing with various things over the years, I have been here for her. I've been doing things for her.
Yeah.
I've been there for every little thing she needs, and yeah,
Yeah.
and she has appreciated that, and it's made her feel very loved. But it doesn't change the fact that from time to time I think about the fact that, yeah, I'm doing all of this stuff, but I still have a hard time saying it. I still have a hard time being physically demonstrative.
Yeah.
And kind of there's kind of this hope that in taking this on, that maybe that guardedness will dissolve to the point that tendency to kind of keep people at bay that way will eventually disappear.
Yeah. Well, what does it, if you bring up the idea of being verbally or physically demonstrative with your love and the way that you feel, what does that bring up in the body? What feelings, what emotions does that bring up?
I don't know about what feelings and emotions, but all I can say is that um, it well, I guess maybe I can answer your
Yeah.
question. It brings up this sense of becoming vulnerable. Like, if
Yeah.
I do this, I'm letting down my guard. I open myself up to, you know,
So feel that in the body, feel that vulnerability in the body,
hmm, hmm,
because the mental part doesn't really matter. It's
okay.
really this feeling that we are trying to protect against.
Well, in trying to get in touch with that sense of being vulnerable, immediately things begin to kind of tighten up. Things begin to kind
Mhm.
of close off.
Yeah. Feel into that. Let it happen so you can get a real good sense of what that closing off feels like. And notice if it feels like it's re-instigating that feeling of me separate from her,
Yeah.
the one who
And,
needs to be protected.
yeah, me separate from anything.
Yeah. And
It creates with it comes a very noticeable sense of boundary.
yeah, good. And so feel that sense of a boundary. Feel the physical sensations that make up that boundary.
Okay.
Get a good indication of where in the body they are, how that physical felt sensation is being known.
The boundary doesn't change any. I mean, in other words, there's not a sensation specific to the sense of boundary. The
Mhm.
physical sensation of closing down, of tightening up, doesn't change. It's just there's sort of this mental sense that gets overlaid that
Yeah,
creates the sense of boundary.
good. So tell me, and that's getting to where I was hoping you would see, is that those physical sensations do not actually create any sort of boundary or wall between anything.
Right. It's just a
They're
it's just a
secondary,
sensation.
unnecessary sensations. It's just tightening up in the body that does not actually protect you from anything.
Yeah,
And
you're right. And there's not any less vulnerable.
you are not. You are not. So this wall of boundary that seems to come in, a barrier that seems to come in, how is that actually experienced?
How is the barrier
The,
actually
the,
experienced?
the, 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 you said there's like a mental overlay of
Mhm.
how is that actually known or recognized?
It's kind of along the lines of a never know how to talk about this stuff.
You know, it's
Uh,
subtle.
it's kind of a nonverbal thought, or maybe I've sometimes referred to it as mental feeling
Hmm.
or a mental sense. It seems like there's something that happens in this general region, kind of a
Yeah.
just a sense of knowing or understanding, or um, I don't know, something along those lines. Again, it really resists being rendered in English.
So if this overlay, whether it's thought or anything else, is a barrier, what is on the inside of that barrier, that boundary? What is it protecting?
Well, there's not really an inside to it. It's more like a dividing line. It's there's no inside. It's there's this on one side and all of that on the other side.
Okay, so what is this? What
This
is the root of this?
this is the place where things are seen and heard and sensations are felt. Um, um, that don't know how else to say it.
Does that have a location though? Does that have like a definitive central point?
I wouldn't call it a central point. I would just say it's a sense of here-ness.
And does that overlay actually sequester that here-ness from everything that is outside of it?
No, it doesn't. It's a total illusion, and it's a really bad illusion at that.
Mm.
I mean, the thought came up a little while ago. How did I ever believe in this?
Mhm.
I mean, you talk about the most feeble
Mhm.
illusion. You
Yeah,
know, wow, pretty pathetic.
yeah, yeah, it is.
You know,
So,
if this illusion was an illusionist, he'd be out
yeah.
of work.
Oh, completely, right? Terrible. So what is to be protected by this feeble illusion of a boundary or a barrier?
Nothing. It's just buying into an idea.
Yeah. And so if you were going to be openly demonstrative with all the love, how would this protect you? What is this protecting you from experiencing?
It's not. It's just an idea. It's an idea and a belief. It doesn't actually function in any way other than to keep um, a being restrained.
Mhm. And the being isn't even there, and it's not really being restrained. At best, it's just creating a cause and effect chain where the behavior that comes next is one that is not saying, I love you and giving a hug because it's now operating from this belief that
Right.
something bad might come if you do.
Well, let me rephrase that about the being. What I'm
Yeah.
trying to say is that there is a body that can act, and
Hmm.
it stops that body from acting.
Yeah, exactly. So when we feel that closing down, that pulling back, that restraining, that wall that comes in, we can
Mhm.
recognize in that moment, is this an actual barrier or boundary? Is it something that needs to be taken seriously? Or can I still act through it? Can you feel the discomfort that arises? Can you feel that closing off that's trying to protect that discomfort? That's trying to protect something in here. And you can, A, look for that something that is trying to be protected and see if on that on the here near side of that invisible wall, isn't it just that spaciousness? Is there anything solid in here to be protected?
No,
And on the other side of that wall, isn't there just spaciousness? Is there anything there to be protected from?
no. I mean, it's like trying to put a small net in the middle of an infinite pool.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great one. So you can then feel, and again, you can tell yourself, it's okay, I'm safe. You can feel that spaciousness, and you can have that confidence that it's okay to be open and loving and let that guard down in a healthy relationship situation.
Reminds me of Douglas Harding and Richard Lang with Face to No Face or
Yeah,
No
yeah,
Face to No Face.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly. You
Hmm.
know, if this was like a really toxic, dangerous, abusive relationship, I wouldn't be saying this because then there are practicalities here. But
Right.
but in this kind of relationship, when it's this unfounded barrier that is trying to create some sense of division and separation and protection ultimately, if you are not actually in danger in a way where you need to be protected, then this is not useful in this moment.
Right.
This is just an um old pattern which is no longer relevant to the current situation.
Right.
So it's really, in Zen they talk a lot about that like skillful action where it's like an appropriate, Zen is like an appropriate response. And
Hmm.
it's having that appropriate response in any given situation. And it's to know the difference between being in an abusive relationship where you might be physically or emotionally in danger, and then pulling back and recoiling for protection there, versus being in a healthy relationship that's a loving relationship where it's safe to let that go and be free and loving and open and demonstrative because you're not in danger. So it's that skillful recognition of this moment not being the same as that moment. So this moment calls for different action.
Right.
This moment is a different response than the previous one. And really living out of this moment and not our memories or reminiscences of past moments that have even the faintest hint of similarity to them.
Okay. Hmm. Guess who? One moment. And they're back.
Welcome back, guys.
To those people in the comments who say they love it when the dogs make an appearance.
Yeah, there are. So this is for you.
Yeah, you got your wish.
It's lovely. See, there's something for everyone in these talks.
Well, I was really pleased to see that when they're, I think you saw it too. It sounds like you saw them too. There are a couple of different people who made comments about it, and I
Yeah.
felt a sense of relief because there had been some other comments. They weren't negative. They just were, it kind of seemed like maybe um, I got the sense, and it may just be how I interpreted it, but the sense that maybe they would have felt better if there weren't these distractions. So, to
Yeah.
see people saying, I love it when the dogs make an appearance. Hooray!
Yay. No, I think the good
Dogs.
thing about these talks too is that they're very like laid back and conversational, and it's okay. There are dogs entering, there are dogs leaving, things happen, life happens. It's very natural.
Well,
So
and I was thinking about earlier today because, I've mentioned this several times in the last few weeks, but, I've been listening to, going through slowly making my way through all of these previous conversations. And it struck me earlier today when I was listening that, I've seen other things of this sort on YouTube,
mhm.
and some of them are somewhat laid back. A lot of them seem much more formal. Some of them
Yeah,
seem serious. And I realized that um, the one thing I noticed about the conversations between you and I is that there is always some degree of humor and
yeah,
there's a fair amount of laughter.
yeah,
Like
absolutely.
I can't think of any other talks I've seen that are like that. I'm like,
Yeah,
hey, that's great. You
it
know,
really is. It really is. And this is not to put down anybody else or any other thing, but
sure.
I I don't see the point in that if it's just a natural, sincere seriousness, that's fine. But
Right.
the way that, me, Pernilla, the way that we are is just very laughy and laid back, and it's just it would be completely artificial to put on this, okay, and now I'm in the serious teacher role and we're going to,
Right.
it would be such a facade. And it's just, and again, it's not to say that other people are faking it or whatever. For some people
Right.
they're just serious like that, but
Right.
I couldn't possibly do a talk like that where this is just what you get. This is how it is. It's very,
Yeah.
it's very this. We're very casual.
Well, and I think that would kind of, for me, that would create some degree, unconscious or some degree of unconscious sense of, okay, well, you got to mind your P's and Q's, and
Yeah.
this is a very specific environment, and it
Yeah.
doesn't tend to feel that way to me. It just feels like an extension of life here rather than, okay, I go back to the room, I close the door, and it's this thing.
Yeah.
This just, if
Completely.
it feels very much like it's connected to the rest of my life.
Exactly. And I think it's fine if you're on, retreat and you go into Dokusan or something and you're, talking
Yeah.
to the teacher. But this is really about integration in life. This should be what life feels like. It
Hmm.
is this kind of interaction. I mean, the beautiful thing about the relationship that I have with Pernilla is that this is how our life is all the time. There is not like, everything is an examined moment. There's, anything that happens, like the thing with the MRI today. It's like all just examined and we talk about everything that comes up. We have a dream, we talk about it. We have whatever it is, and it's like we're open for all of it to be present for everything that shows up. And so this kind of talk is just how life is. And it really is integrating this stuff in every moment of our day. Um, even when we're watching TV or something, it's still, there's some aspect of awareness to everything that's there. So it's just the way life is.
Yeah. And now
And
it's really different for us here because Susanna and I are more kind of at the beginning of things. Her maybe more than me because she's come to it more recently, but
mm,
whereas you guys have been at this for much longer than we have. But since we've both been at it for, well, really started to happen for me in a serious way in 2014.
mhm,
For her, 4 years ago. Gosh, almost five. And so I guess she and I are coming to it more from a place of, I guess, kind of the students that we are.
mm.
And and now you want out again. Um, and so we have a lot of these conversations about these things, more from the point of view of how this is unfolding as we're trying to um, uh, how would I put this? Um, as this is in the process of becoming our life,
Yeah.
and how we respond to things and how we receive the things that come up. Um, you know, because you guys, you talk about it with this openness. Well, eventually one day, right now it's more a case of, well, this thing happened and there was a lot of anxiety, but then, I saw that it was just anxiety, and it came and it went. And, so it's very much from a place of learning how to do these things and live this way.
Yeah. And you know, it's such an interesting thing because even though we teach or whatever you want to call this, guiding, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
it feels like we're all still perpetual students. There's
Sure.
there's no point where it's like we're living a teacher life versus a student life. Like it is all the same. We are
Right.
still, you're still exploring, you're still diving in, you're still meditating and learning new techniques and new things. And it's like there's no pretense about being um done in a way where it's like, yep, okay, that's over now. Let's go on.
Yeah.
There's always something there to be examined, to be uprooted. There's more facets of things to be seen through and in different ways and to be deepened. And so it's like there's I think the way that we are is just, yeah, thankfully we're non-reactive and we're, you know, have a perspective where when anything happens, there's no story attached to it or anything. But it's not that far removed, I don't think, from where you guys are. Like thankfully you're both working on this stuff together, which is a blessing in itself. I mean, that's huge.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it really just becomes like the more accustomed you are to not buying into any of those beliefs or those thoughts that show up, the easier it just becomes to roll together with whatever happens because you are just there with sensations arise, sensations pass, no stories. Interactions happen, interactions pass, no stories. Being where you are in the moment, present, without any connection to it has to be this way because that last interaction that we had was like this. This one is now going to be a continuation of that interaction. And the next one is going to be a continuation of this interaction. Each interaction is its own thing. And it's really being present in that way for all of it to just unfold and just be there without those anticipations and expectations and attachments.
I think what I was wanting to convey was that um, we're both we're both very much in the thick of learning how to do it,
Yeah.
and we're helping each other learn how to do it. And I know Susanna kind of sees me a particular way because I started this sometime before she did, and so I think she kind of sees me as somebody with more experience. But I don't really see it that way because she came to it and very quickly made all of this progress and managed to develop in a way that was really astonishing in a short space of time. Like, I wish that had happened to me. Um, I mean,
We just don't, you
yeah, I mean,
don't know when it's going to happen.
I really
No.
don't feel badly about it. It was just really something to see. I was like, wow, it would have been nice to have had things happen so quickly, but things have happened and things have
Yeah.
changed, and that I'm grateful for what has happened. But point is that we're both coming to this from a place of two people learning how to do this and gradually changing our lives, and we're helping each other to do it in the process. And that's the big important point in that, is that we're
Yes.
both we're both there for each other, giving each other a hand. um, because
It's true.
fortunately we very seldom both kind of fall in a hole at the same time.
Yeah,
you
that's
know
great. No, it's so helpful. I mean, that's why Pernilla and I always say that we're each other's gurus because it's like we're always there for the other one in case something, comes up. We're there to listen and to support and to inquire with and we're there for each other in that way. So I think I can't express how fortunate it is to be in a situation like that.
yeah, extremely rare.
Yeah,
And I don't know that I could think of a situation that is more healthy and beneficial,
yeah.
you know,
No,
and especially when you consider, it's probably a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent of people who have anything like that in their lives.
yeah, it's true. And I mean, neither of us had any interest in, oh, sorry, go ahead.
It's her again. Okay, I'm ignoring you when you come back. Inevitably, you will.
Oh,
So you're saying neither of you had any interest?
yeah, I mean, neither of us had any interest in being in a relationship to begin with anyway. And so, and I still, if it wasn't for her, I am certain that I would not be in a relationship now. Like it's one of those things where it is just so perfectly fit that it works and it makes sense. Otherwise, uh, I'm certain that I would not be in one. And she wouldn't be either because it just wasn't on either of our plans or radars or anything to be in a relationship. It just kind of happened, but it fits so well that yeah,
It's things like that that lead me to really doubt the long-standing point of view, that um, things happen. Um, some people will say things happen for a reason, or it
mm,
might be better to say that um, the universe, whatever it is, has a certain intelligence and intention.
yeah.
Because things like that just don't really. I'm not able to easily or comfortably explain them to myself as just happenstance or coincidence.
It's such a tricky thing. We actually just did a video on synchronicity, which I think it just came out. I can't remember. I think it just came out on her channel, on the Awakening Curriculum channel. Um, and the problem is, when we're working with the higher fetter stuff, it's all about just not locking into any belief. And
Mm-hmm.
yes, there is from this limited perspective of this person and that person sitting here with this idea of time and um, what we take to be a positive thing versus a negative thing for this body mind organism and that one, within all of these constraints, it seems like, yes, it's a very synchronistic thing. It's something where, we go through and we're like, uh, so many different things could have happened in either of our lives, particularly hers, because I really didn't have much that was going on. I was just kind of, you know, here. But there were so many ways in the recent years of her life where one small thing that she was going to do didn't happen for some reason, which would have set off a completely different path for her, where she probably would have never ever come in contact with like the Feder Free group, which is how we met. Or I mean, she probably wouldn't have even been teaching in English. She probably would have been in Denmark, not England. Like there were so many things that could have changed depending on these little things that had happened, where the likelihood of us meeting would have been virtually impossible. And so you look at that and it's like, from this limited perspective, where this seems to be a very positive occurrence and where, we're very happy to be here in this situation. From that, it seems like, wow, there's some kismet. Somebody had some hand in that narrative to make all that happen. But we don't know. There's no, we just can't come down on any sort of line with that, because it's all from this very, very limited perspective, that any of that is relevant, is positive, it's just from this very small human perspective located right now in 2024. I mean, if one of us dies in 6 months and it becomes this, terrible grief for the other one, they never would have experienced that grief had we not met. Maybe, if she had remained in gone to Denmark, she would live to be 110. But being here, maybe she'll get hit by a stray bullet, because we're in America, right? Like we don't know what's actually going to happen that could completely change things, and what seems like a really beautiful, perfect situation now could actually be a much worse situation than what would have been had we never met. Right? We just can't anticipate that. So it's coming from
Sure.
that humility of recognizing it seems beautiful and synchronistic and otherworldly now from this one particular vantage point. But from any number of other viewpoints, it might not be the case.
Hmm. Yeah, I see your point, and I don't disagree. I just it's hard to shake the sense of how, for the life of the physical world, going back to the earliest point in time when whatever this is came into being, that everything had to work out just so, everything had to line up for all of the various things that happened for them to happen.
Yeah.
And so I don't know that I would want to put intention on it, but it's hard to shake a sense of some kind of design. I'm not even sure I'm comfortable with that word. It's the fact that those things happened tends to give this sense of that's what was going to happen, if that makes any sense.
I get where you're coming from. And I think that's why we also have like creationist philosophies and that sort of intelligent design kind of philosophy,
Uh,
because it leads down that road. What's also relevant to note, though, is that it it seems like it was meant to happen because it is the thing that happened.
mm-hmm.
We don't know the 10 billion plus one things that didn't happen, that could have, in our minds, have happened, right?
Right.
And those things, if they had happened, would have felt just as designed and incredible for the fact that they did happen.
Uh,
We're in that position because the thing actually did happen, and we wouldn't know that it was a
right.
possibility had it not,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I would have
Well,
to come up with a hypothesis or a hypothetical of like, oh, but only if I met somebody who did exactly the same kind of work as I do and who, is interested in exactly the same things and had the same sense of, and we could come up with that whole list. And most people do come up with like the perfect partner of what they want. And unfortunately, most don't actually get that thing that they're fulfilling. But we don't say like, well, it was just designed that way, right? It's only when like something happens that seems oddly fortuitous that we go, oh, that feels pointed and
I
purposeful.
see. Yeah. Okay.
We actually just watched, it's so funny that this came up because we just watched it was an old Insta video that and I don't know the history of it. I don't think it was fake, but it was one of those things that is just so outrageously crazy if it's real. It was one of those, I don't remember which one. It was like one of those kind of chat roulette kind of things where like you just kind of go on and you talk to random people. And the guy in Texas, I think he was, is talking to this guy in Tennessee. And the guy in Texas is like, that's my girlfriend, Katie, in the background. And she's like, no, 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 I'm not Katie. And he's like, that's not Katie. And she's like, stop lying. I know you're Katie. You were just left my house an hour ago to go wherever she was supposed to be going. And the guy in Tennessee's like, you just said you were going to get your nails done an hour ago. And she's like, yeah, but I got my nails done. And then the guy's like, wait a minute, where are you living? And the guy's like, Texas. And he's like, well, I'm in Tennessee. It would have been impossible for her to just be with you an hour ago. And so the
Right.
guy in Tennessee is like, where did you grow up? Were you from California? And she goes, yeah, I'm from California. And so he's like, okay, I'm going to call my girlfriend. And if the phone rings there, right? So he called his girlfriend and she's like, hello, different person, spitting image. The girl in the video goes, I mean, on the in Tennessee goes, um, were you? It turns out she was adopted, and she goes to the other girl, were you adopted from San Bernardino, blah blah blah, or whatever? And the girl's like, yeah. So like twins that never knew that they had a sister met by this freak like chat roulette kind of a thing, just being in frame while somebody else is there. And it turns out they have like, all this stuff in common. And it's like, so they were get like booked a flight immediately to like get together and meet.
That's
So like
hilarious.
if yeah, so it's that kind of thing that's like completely absurd. I mean, the likelihood of that seems unfathomable from our perspective,
Yeah.
but we have to have that recognition that our understanding of anything, how anything in the world works, is insanely limited. I mean, we are just primates. The fact that we are able to talk on this crazy computer situation
Yeah.
with satellites beaming, you know,
Right.
Wi-Fi and all that is insane. And it's incredible what we have been able to do, but it is still just a fraction of a glimpse into how any of the universe works. We don't know. Um, and it's all always relevant to notice that the whenever we see these things and say, oh, that's just amazing, and it's like divine intervention or something, it's coming from this very limited human perspective where it's
Right.
relevant to this story of this character who is
Hmm.
here, who, when we break that down, that identity who's even, it's not even relevant beyond that relative world of where this
Yeah.
person relates to that person,
You're
all of that.
right.
On that deeper, more universal thing, there's no separation there to begin with. There's no difference between her and her sister and the boyfriend and the other boyfriend, and having all of that made meaningful takes into account each of these little narrative self storylines,
Right.
kind of ties a thread between all of them. But ultimately, it's just this strange chain of causality that is absolutely unfathomably vast and complicated.
And arising out of a subatomic whirl.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's a very strange manifestation of it. But beyond that, we really don't know what is what. and it's not to say that there isn't some, but we can't lock into a belief that there
I
is
agree with
because
you.
we
Yeah.
just don't know.
Yeah, I'm not comfortable with doing that with just about anything. I'm not
Yeah.
comfortable with locking into a this is how it is. This is, I mean, to get locked into a belief about anything to me is over a period of decades. I've learned to really understand that as really kind of a dangerous place to be.
Yeah, it really is. It's fine if you are able to sustain a belief for your entire life until the moment that you die, and then, have a very happy existence if that belief is functional. If it's really like people who believe that you're gonna see your loved ones again in heaven, right? That's a really comforting belief if it's
Mhm.
true. And people get a lot of comfort from that.
Right,
The problem is just if at some point during your existence that belief suddenly breaks down. If for
right.
some reason it gets shaken, then your entire worldview, your everything that you have based all of your sense of comfort and longevity and all that on, that collapses with it. And then it becomes extremely destabilizing.
You said the word I was thinking. I was thinking, and there goes all of your stability.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why, the Buddha didn't give statements, the definitive statements that didn't say there is a God or no God. There didn't say there is a self or no self. He didn't say that any of that because as soon as you come down on one side of it, it's a belief and it's unstable.
Hmm.
You have to maintain that at all costs, or else your whole world collapses.
Well, are you familiar with Robert Anton Wilson?
Vaguely. Yeah, I haven't really read him, his stuff. I've heard some interviews, but I'm not like, yeah.
Well, he summed his response to all of this stuff. He summed up in one word, and I've even got um, a couple of the books by him that he signed, and he signed
Really?
it with this one word, which is his way of dealing with all of this. Maybe,
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
and that's pretty much how I come at it with
Yep.
most things. Maybe,
Yep.
you know, that's the most reasonable and honest answer I can give.
Yep. Yep. And as long as we can be comfortable with that, maybe that's a huge thing.
Yeah.
It's just being comfortable in the ambiguity.
I'm way more comfortable with maybe than I am some sort of set idea about how the universe works. I mean, the
Yeah,
information we're given is all interpreted through nervous systems that are unreliable. And how can
absolutely.
I comfortably say, okay, well, yeah, I've got all this information from all of these other people out there about how the world works, and I'm going to go ahead and take that and I'm going to just bank on it.
Yeah,
No, no, ugh, I can't deal with that.
I know.
It's way more comfortable.
I am absolutely with you on that. Yeah. Um, One thing I wanted to go back to before I forget,
Okay.
because I think this is helpful. You had mentioned with Tex that she was rude and condescending.
Oh yeah, that's right. You
Uh,
mentioned that earlier. Yeah.
yeah, and I was curious about that one because it's so well. Okay, first of all, I was interested in, without maybe necessarily going into all the specifics, but like what you took to be rude and condescending
Hmm.
is always it's relevant for us to see when we feel like somebody is being a certain way. This is a very
Hmm.
Fetter Five thing of noticing how true that actually is.
Mm.
So
Okay.
the assumption is she said something and
Right.
you took it to be rude and condescending.
Right.
But I'm curious for you why it was interpreted that way.
Because the things that were said, the tone of voice they were said in, and the body language that went with it, are the things that um, are seen when she is has been that way in the past.
Mm, okay. So in the past, you interpreted it as rude and condescending. So
Well,
in this moment, in this particular instance, what was it that made you interpret it as rude and condescending?
boy, I don't know how to answer that other than what I said already. In that, in the past, when she's angry, upset, and then she starts getting an attitude and starts, she becomes impatient and irritable and all of those things. That's the kind of body language, tone of voice, things that are said that accompany that. So,
Still, we're getting closer, but again, it doesn't have to do with in the past when she's had those things. It's
okay.
what is it about that particular tone of voice, that particular
Hmm.
language that you interpret as rude and condescending?
Well, if I'm not going to refer to previous experience, then I don't know.
Hmm.
Uh, hmm. I'm afraid I'm going to wind up being somewhat circular no matter how hard I try. Okay, if we set aside past experience, then I would say in the moment, all of the signals I was getting were that she was upset, she was angry, she was annoyed, irritated, and was expressing those things.
Okay. So good. So if she was upset, angry, annoyed, and expressing those things, why were they interpreted for you in a way which made you angry and upset? The interpretation was that she was being rude and condescending, which is
Right.
different from her just being angry and expressing those things.
Mm-hmm.
There's a pointedness to those where she is turning it against you in a way that you don't like. So the question is, what is it about that uh her expression of being angry and upset that makes you take it personally and get yourself in a state where you are angry and upset?
Okay. So what you're asking me is, why is that a problem for me?
Effectively, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm just trying to
Yeah,
clarify. I'm
yeah, yeah,
not
yeah,
trying to be
totally.
reductionist about
No,
it.
no, 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 totally.
um,
Effectively, yeah.
um, when somebody gets kind of condescending, arrogant, kind of know it all, when they get that kind of tone of voice, when they roll their eyes at you, somehow, I don't know where this comes from. Um, the idea is that they think they are better than me and that they know better than me. And for whatever reason, for me, there has been a history going all the way back to some point in time in the early years of believing that's true. Oh, and it's not a conscious thing, but
Mhm.
kind of to describe the internal processes. Okay, they're talking in a way that is condescending. They're angry. They seem to, the message I'm getting is they think they're better than me. They know better than me. Well, that must be true,
Mm,
and so I wind up taking on the reduced human role. I become small.
yeah.
I'm less than.
Good. So do you recognize then in that moment, she didn't actually make you feel any of those things?
Yes, she
It,
had she had no way of knowing that. I mean, it's reasonable to assume on another person's part that that kind of thing is probably going to hurt somebody, hurt their feelings, upset them in some way. But she had no way of knowing that that would generate a sense of feeling small in me.
yeah, exactly. And that the interpretation of her rolling her eyes and speaking the way that she did it's just because it's triggering this old pattern that you have. It's another of those underlying things of you of being not as good as other people, not as smart as other people.
Hmm.
It's that same insecurity that gets triggered, which makes it seem that she is being rude and condescending when it doesn't really matter in that regard, right? It's
Hmm.
that fact that it's still going to that old wound and it's poking that wound, which makes it feel so personal and so pointed and triggers that anger response, which you so well were able to sit with and get it. You could ride for a while and that's great.
Right.
But this is getting underneath, that to why that even had to come out to begin with, why
Right.
you even had an anger sensation that you needed to ride. This is because it's trying to deflect from feeling that small, unworthy, not good enough, not smart enough sense that gets triggered when she rolls
Huh.
her eyes. And
Hang on a minute. I need to wrap my head around that fully. So,
yeah,
um, the anger is to deflect from the feeling small. Is that what you were saying?
exactly. Yeah. That feeling not smart enough, too small, or being a reduced human.
Huh. So,
That's the primary discomfort.
and so the anger is a distraction or a deflection from that.
Exactly. Yeah. Anger is always a distraction from feeling something else. And in this case, there you are.
Okay, because the way it seemed to me at the time was more of a defense, which may be saying the same thing just in a different
Mm.
way. That okay, I'm angry now, and now I'm going to defend, and we're talking about ego, sense of self, personality,
Mhm.
going to defend this imaginary being. Um, is that the same thing or a facet of the same thing, or am I completely off the mark?
No, 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 very much a facet of that. What are you
Okay.
defending? You're defending the one who feels small, uncomfortable,
Uh,
less than. It's a way of framing it so that it seems more um uh
Noble.
positive or yeah, noble, yeah, understandable, right? Like,
Yeah,
of course you have to defend yourself. Of course that was the right thing to, right?
I see.
It's
Yeah.
justifiable. And it also very conveniently keeps hidden that feeling
Ah,
of being less than, not good
okay,
enough.
when you put it that way, it's easier to see. So even if you are defending, then it still doesn't change the fact that there's this other thing that
Yeah,
that is being obscured because for whatever reason we don't want to see that, we don't want to know it, we don't want to feel it. So
exactly.
instead of feeling small, it gets obscured by the fact that I'm feeling anger and I walk away from that situation. I was never aware of the fact that I felt small. I was only aware of the fact that I felt angry.
Exactly. And if you
Wow.
aren't
Okay.
even aware of like doing this kind of work, you come off feeling like I have protected myself. I was the victim in that situation and I have stood up for myself. And now I feel a sense of stability and goodness that
And I
was
feel
there
justified.
to feel justified. Exactly. So it completely covers over and obscures what actually needs to be seen to begin with.
Okay. All right.
So yeah. So going back to, and I think that's where we were heading anyway, but just to recognize that when we feel like somebody is being rude or condescending to us, yes, maybe they are being angry and emoting and rolling their eyes and saying things in a certain tone. But notice that your interpretation of that is not necessarily clean and unbiased and objective.
Right.
The way that we interpret it is often much more self-serving and negative than it really is if an outside
Yeah.
observer were to witness it. And it's because it's really touching that wound. You're feeling it and it's amplifying and magnifying the entire situation for you because it feels now like it's not just her rolling her eyes once. Rolling her eyes by itself is nothing. It's literally an eye movement, right?
Hmm.
Like it's literally an eye movement. you have to read an entire story into that, and it has to go to every other time in Darrell's life that he has felt less than and belittled and not smart enough and all of that. And it's just
Right.
like, boop, there's that little button again, pushing it, rolled my eyes, pushed it again. It's just eyes moving in somebody's sockets, right? Like there's no
Right.
connection there at all in the objective world. So it's to recognize in as real time as possible, and if not, then in the, you know, aftermath as close as you can. Like, has what connection was there? You know, how does somebody going trigger and equate to me feeling like I need to get angry and raise my voice or do something else? There are a lot of steps that happen in a very short amount of time between those two things. And it's recognizing again and again that there is no active connection between and damn it, woman. You know, like there's a lot going on. Those two things are not. That's my rage posture.
That's great.
There's no connection there at all, but
Okay.
you just have to break it down so that you can start to see what is actually happening in real time. And then the whole charade falls apart.
Well, it reminds me of, and it's been a while since I've read this or heard this, so I can't remember the exact phrasing, but there's this idea in AA that comes from the big book, and AA where I was living then. This idea was something you heard people would remind each other of it a lot, that when it comes to these sorts of things where two parties are dealing with each other and we're having to um, do some investigative work, do some detective work to see what's going on. This is where it gets to the AA part: is we have to drop blame from our vocabulary.
Yeah,
I have
completely.
to completely remove the other person and everything about them from it,
Yep,
and the direction, everything turns back here, everything looks back here.
exactly right. And that's why we talk about the verbal indicators, blaming, shaming, complaining, and explaining.
Oh yeah,
Because as soon as we do that, we are diverting from what is in here to it's your fault that I feel this way.
right.
I have to explain myself so that you feel it's different. You know, I'm manipulating your feelings so that I can feel, you know, not feel guilty or not feel shame or something like that. And
Well, that finally puts that in a context. I mean, I've heard her say that in the videos and on Q&A and other places, who knows how many times,
yeah,
and I understood it, but that actually makes it more meaningful in that it somehow gives it a context that really locks it in a way that it hadn't been before.
yeah, excellent. Yeah. And that's
So,
it's all very fifth fetter, fourth and fifth fetter stuff where we're externalizing everything and manipulating other people and ourselves in order to feel a certain way or not feel a way that we don't want to feel.
oh, okay. Hopefully you're happy for a while.
Yay.
Um, okay, well, I'm gonna have to there's always a lot to remember, and I've been listening to the older conversations, but I think I need to, as soon as this one's available, go back through this and really reinforce some of this stuff.
Mm.
um, because it's easy to lose track of this, but
Oh, for sure.
that's really important. um, I mean, it potentially changes everything if in those situations we can learn to stop and remove the other person from the equation entirely.
Absolutely. Yeah, because it's never about the other person. It's
Right.
always about ourself and our reaction and our interpretation of what's going on.
Absolutely. I see that. I see that.
Yeah. And it's really where the only reason that we say that it's easier to work with 4 and 5 after the first fetter is out of the way is because it's very hard when we're seeing things obscured through that self-reflective lens that everything is about me. And,
Yeah.
clearly, if somebody says something, they were really doing it. She's really hates me because she rolled her eyes and she really thinks she's better than me because I'm believing every thought that comes up in my mind. And I believe that is all absolutely true. So everything that pops to mind is clearly unquestionable. And so if we're coming from that lens, that first fetter lens, it's very hard to see things in that perspective where we recognize, well, actually, she was just feeling angry and upset and she rolled her eyes because she is deflecting from feeling something that she doesn't want to feel. She doesn't
Right.
have the tools that you have to feel the sensations that are there and to not do something about it. She has to also just externalize it in some way. And so she's externalizing on you what she feels uncomfortable about. And then you're externalizing onto her what you feel uncomfortable about. And it's just this terrible feedback loop of each person throwing their shit at the other one just because they can't sit with the discomfort of having it in their lap. And
Right.
and so this is what we're doing is recognizing that no, it's not about the other person. It's just because I feel it, just because the thought comes to mind that she was rude to me doesn't mean she was actually rude to me or that she wanted something me to feel a certain way. This is my stuff that is causing this to come out and be experienced this way. And it's something I can investigate and look into so that I don't have to throw my shit at other people. And if they throw their shit at me, it doesn't stick. You have that non-stick finish where you sprayed yourself with and just anything that comes at you, it doesn't hit anything anymore. It just slides off because there's no relevant you recognize that it has nothing to do with you. If somebody is being openly belligerent and you know calling you names or whatever, it's never about you.
Right.
Whatever anybody thinks about you isn't about you. It's their projection and it's coming from their own damage. It's their own trauma, their own toxic beliefs and all of that
Wow.
they're working from. So you don't
Right.
have to take that seriously.
You're right.
This is what I was pointing at months ago when I talked about, the people on other continents thinking about you, but then also
Yep.
the same as the people in your house. There is no connection. They're not really seeing you or acting towards you in the way that you think they are, because they are not seeing you in this completely objective way that sees
Right.
Darrell as he currently is. And it does not have to have any connection to how you feel about yourself. How anybody else sees you, how anybody else sees you does not connect to your internal vision of yourself because
Right.
that's just their opinion based off of their baggage and beliefs and all of that stuff. So you don't have to own any of that.
Right. And there's less of that than there now than there was. I mean, obviously there's still some. I mean, there,
But
that's undeniable, but it, these sorts of things happen. And, it used to be when these sorts of things would happen, if I got upset, it was even worse. Even if I didn't get upset and react, just the fact that that was being directed at me wound up turning into this tribunal. And
yeah,
if I did react, it took that they're directing it at me, plus the fact that I reacted, and now it's even worse. And so there, like I said, there's this tribunal, and
yeah,
all of the old tape loops are playing about, see, you are the problem, and just playing out all of those ideas about lack of value and
yeah,
not being any good and all of that. And now those things happen, and I might feel upset, it might feel a little bit of a sting just because somebody directed at me, but
yeah.
and if I do start to hear any of those old voices, they don't have the kind of intensity they used to have, and it doesn't last as long. I mean, if it comes up,
Wonderful.
it'll last for a very brief period of time, maybe a few seconds, maybe a few minutes, and it goes. And then I'm just, just kind of left with the emotional hangover from the situation rather than the emotional hangover plus all of the stuff that got added on to it. That's all my
Yeah,
old stuff from years past.
completely. Wonderful.
So I noticed that more and more, and that's a huge relief.
No, absolutely. That's wonderful. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah, it's nice to have these things happen and not walk away and be clobbering yourself and go, see, you do suck.
Exactly. Yeah, it adds nothing to the situation. All it does is just reinforce those same toxic narratives about yourself, and then you again just continue seeing that in every aspect of the rest of your day.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's gradually changing direction. Things are gradually taking a um, um, changing form.
Yeah.
I mean,
Good.
there's still a lot of the same stuff, like the situation you were just talking about. The fact that there was that reaction, I got upset, but at the same time, I recognized it instantly, and I realized, here's your opportunity, grab it.
Exactly.
And
That's
then
huge.
waited for it to pass, and then when it had passed, I started talking to her again, but I wasn't talking to her from a place of anger. I
Mhm.
I
Yep.
still was talking to her in the tone of voice and the volume level I was talking to her at prior to that, you know, and then
Yep.
actually was able to walk away from it. And I knew she was upset with me, and kind of referring back to or kind of along the lines of what I was just saying a minute ago, there wasn't the tribunal of, see, you really do suck. She's,
Yeah.
she thinks you bad. You're bad. You must be bad.
Yeah.
You've disappointed her, and what's wrong with you? And there was none of that. I was like, well, she's upset with me. I guess she gets to be upset with me. And I went on about my business.
Wonderful. There you go. There you go.
Yeah.
Um, that is huge. That's really good progress.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And actually, on that front, I'll mention this, and I know you're going to want to go because it's getting later. But um, I had an interesting exchange with Susanna last night because it dawned on me yesterday. Um, it may happen, but I haven't noticed it. But I said I noticed yesterday I don't seem to raise my voice anymore. Like usually where it happens with the dogs. The dogs would
Yeah,
start
yeah,
barking, do crazy stuff, and I would start raising my voice.
yeah.
And it dawned on me at one point because they all went crazy, and I just like, okay, everyone, be quiet. No, 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 no.
Yeah.
And then it hit me. I didn't raise and I haven't been. And I thought, no. And so later on that day, I asked Susanna about it. Like, have you noticed that I don't raise my voice anymore? She said, yeah, I noticed that a few weeks ago.
That's great. Amazing. It a purpose you thought, right? It was that release valve when things were feeling too bottled up, the dogs were making noise and all this, and it's like, letting off that steam by
Right.
yelling. Now, if there's as much of that, or even if that pressure is rising, being able to feel, just be with that pressure and not have to distract from it in that way makes that yelling, the raising of the voice completely superfluous. It's just an unnecessary thing.
And that's the key, actually, because even though I consider it a work in progress to be able to remember more of the time to stop and feel the primary sensation and sit with it and let it take its full course and not distract from it with saying something to somebody or getting
Yep.
lost in thought. It's been happening enough, and I've been doing it with anything that's unpleasant. It's like,
Yes.
oh, that left a really bad taste in your mouth. Okay, well, just let it be. Instead of going and getting a
Nice.
piece of candy or brushing your teeth, just
Yeah,
let
yeah,
that
yeah.
really nasty sensation just sit there for a while and just
That's great.
live with it. And so I've it's gradually been increasing, doing that more and more to just stay with whatever unpleasantness has shown up. And I have noticed finally in recent weeks that there's still a ways to go, but there has definitely been a diminished reactivity.
Wonderful. It makes such a difference to just be able to be with discomfort.
Hmm.
It's a crazy sounding thing, but we just don't learn to do it. It's like we learn to deflect and distract in every possible way just so we never have to feel uncomfortable.
Well, there's still a lot of work to be done in that arena, and that's fine. I'm just glad for the
Yeah,
progress that's shown up, and obviously the fact that some has happened means more will more of that will happen in the future. Just keep
yeah,
doing what we're doing.
completely.
So
So good.
yeah, who'd have thunk?
I know.
You know, it's like always been kind of reluctant to publicly refer to him, but I'll go ahead and give credit where credit is due. Um, Damorato used to say that all the
Yeah.
time. We can change.
Yeah, it's true. He's
Yeah,
right. He's absolutely
yeah.
right. Yeah.
So
We are nothing but change. Or
yeah, you're
there's
right.
nothing static here.
Yeah,
It's actually recognizing that we are not stuck, that we are nothing but what we take to be a we or a me. It's nothing but a constantly changing flow of different causes and conditions. So of course, if some of those conditions change, the new effects or causes and effects, I guess is better than that. But if the conditions change, the next effects are different. If the prior causes are different, the next effects are different. Um, we're much more um, flexible, malleable, impermanent creatures than we tend to lock ourselves into when we take on that role of a name and an identity and that fixed sense of who we have always been. So that's who we must always be.
right.
It's just not true.
Wow, that was a really good way to put it because you said that right as the idea of my mom was coming to mind, and I was thinking about how my mom is just stuck in a loop, and it's been this way for going on 30 years. I really longer than that, but the way things look for her now really has kind of been in motion for getting close to 30 years. And but then you just said it, I mean, because she's very locked into her name and her identity and her story, and so that's going to reinforce those behaviors and those patterns.
It does. And
So,
then also for your perspective, not only noticing how you lock in, or have locked in, maybe you're hopefully, I think doing this less now, but locking into that not it's sorry, let me just rephrase that. It's not only how you have and if you still continue in sometimes to lock into that identity of Darrell and all of the baggage that assumes,
mm-hmm.
but also notice even when you think of your mother, how you have locked her being a certain way that you have this
Hmm.
this is how she has defined in my life. The memories that come up when I think of this is how she is and has always been, and how much of that actually being rooted that same of stagnation.
Hmm.
We define people in that way. Our interpretation of them and memory of them and expectation of them are from that same stagnant identification, that locked in version of I think people are.
Hmm.
So you can even
Wow, that
let
would have never
go
occurred
of.
to me.
So
Huh?
you can even start to let go of and free up those associations with having been the way that you remember her being, that you interpreted her being, those roles that she played, those ways that that sort of almost like a caricature that we create lives.
Hmm. Wow. Yeah, you're right.
Recognizing that's your, you know, your assumed identity that you have placed on her.
Right.
And, you know, letting go, being able to give up those stories that make somebody the person that you think that they have always been, so that you see them new light for the first time. each time.
Okay. I'm gonna have to let that sink in. That's a new idea.
Yeah.
Interesting. Huh. Okay. Hmm. Well, I'm at saturation point.
Yeah, we went through a lot. And for some reason my internet connect.
I noticed that here in the last couple of minutes, the video
Yeah.
quality's been kind of all over the map, and
Yeah.
we're kind of breaking up a bit there.
Yeah, I don't know why that is.
Oh,
Um,
well, who knows?
this has been great though.
It has
It's
been
been
great.
really
It's
good
been
talk.
fantastic. It's been. I'm at a loss for words. Wow. Um, I'm actually really looking forward to listening to this
Hmm.
in the coming week. All right.
It's a pleasure, as always.
Yeah. Well, thank you, as
Thank you so
always.
much. It's so good talking with you and keep up the great work.
You know, as long as I'm drawing breath,
Excellent.
you can count on it. Okay. Well, you guys take care, and I'll talk to you soon.
You too. Likewise. Thanks again.
Bye.
Bye.